Back in the Gun, episode number 55 here of your new favorite WVU football podcast. It is ITG. Wesley Uhler with the best teammates in the business. Got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, our buddy Owen Schmitt. He's got some stuff going on right now. He's running around, being a dad, doing some family things. So he might hop in here for a few minutes. We'll see. If he does, it'll be a pleasant surprise. If not, we'll just catch up with Big O next week. Speaking of new dad, thanks to everybody who gave us some time last week as my wife and I welcomed our second child into the world on May 20th, last Saturday. All good, all healthy, all happy, all smooth. Jed, one night in the hospital, and my wife was like, "Get me out of here. Let's go home." I mean, we were in the hospital for 24 hours. That's about it. So
you guys are like the Zane Smith of parents
that's right.
giving birth.
Exactly.
You work quick. You're in, you're out, right?
The first time you want to stay because you're asking questions and they're teaching you things, and you got the lactation specialist there to help and all this different stuff, right? Second time, it's like riding a bike. It's like, we're good. Get me back to my own bed. So, but obviously, I know a lot of our listeners had reached out or just in the comments and things like that, and wished my wife and I well. All is well, happy, healthy, and thanks to everybody for the kind words and the support.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes. So we'll be taking two girls to the Duquesne football game, which we have a kickoff time for, but we'll get to that in just a minute here, folks. First, you already know this episode of ITG brought to you by our friends.
You just said Duquesne football game.
Yeah, that's the one I'm going to take the girls to, because that's like, that's an easy win. That's a not so hostile crowd.
So I know how you like. I know how you like to address
backyard. I'm not taking them to the backyard brawl.
I thought you were making a reference. Anyway, the best school in Pittsburgh. Was that? Yeah.
It is nice to have a kickoff time against Pittsburgh's preeminent collegiate athletic program, Duquesne. I guess we'll talk about those Pitt Panthers as well too.
As well. Oh, by the way, yeah.
This episode of ITG is brought to you by our friends, in part by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline, your number one source for all of your basketball information, stats, news, and scores. You can get the latest odds and lines and all the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA playoffs. BetOnline is your sports intel headquarters this season. It's got you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs, from basketball, baseball, hockey, golf, UFC, and boxing, you name it. That's right. It's the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information, including live betting options, also with your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your home. So get into the action today and head to the website or use your mobile device to join. And make sure you use the promo code Bleav when you sign up to receive your 50% bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV at BetOnline, where the game starts. Jed, go ahead.
We go back to BetOnline briefly later in the episode, but go ahead.
Yes, we'll talk. Yes. We'll talk about some odds. Maybe one of those events every year where people debate: is this really a sport or not? Or why is this on ESPN? No, I'm not talking about the World Series of Poker.
Degenerates assemble.
We will talk some degenerate assembling before we get out of here. Yep. Jed, we will talk the announcement of some kickoffs as well too. Pat McAfee signing a big deal with ESPN, more Big 12 expansion rumors here. But to get us started today around campus, as we like to do from time to time, the baseball team, they are going to be a 2 seed in the Kentucky Regional. Hey, unfortunate end to the regular season in the Big 12 tournament. Didn't go the way that any of us wanted it to go, that they wanted it to go. And that kind of cost them, potentially hosting a regional in Morgantown, something that happened in 2019, obviously a few years back. But they will head to Kentucky, not too far away, number 2 seed, and they will be in that pot of 4 with Kentucky, Indiana, and I forget who the fourth team is.
But they will. School.
It's a MAC school. Yeah, it's not a huge school, but obviously they will take on Indiana. Ball State sounds right. And the winner of that will play the winner of the 1 versus 4 matchup. So number 2 seed in Kentucky. And hey, you're upset that you're not hosting a regional. That's obviously what you wanted and what you were in position for just a few weeks ago. But I think when you look at this group, hey, there's an opportunity to kind of get some of that sour taste out of your mouth and go and have some success here in Lexington.
Yeah, a couple things, Wes. First, I think it speaks to the overall body of work when you can get swept in the last series of the regular season, when you can get knocked out winless in 2 games in the Big 12 tournament and yet you still enter the NCAA tournament as a 2 seed.
As a 2 seed, yeah.
That says so much about your overall body of work for the season. So that's one thing. Second, JJ Weatherholt making news saying, yep, I'll absolutely be back. He broke it on Tony's podcast with Hoppy.
Big 12 player of the year.
Big 12 player of the year, set a school record with a 4.43 average at the end of the regular season. So big news for Mountaineer baseball there. But what a weird dynamic with this Lexington host site, right? Some poor planning, however it fell through on their end. The teams are going to end up staying in the dormitories.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's near campus. I mean, you might even have individual rooms, however it turns out. But that, if anything, that's an accident that wasn't intended. So it's very strange. You would think that, and as I understand it, there's some other things at play going on in the Lexington area.
Well, yeah, there's a big country music festival, and
didn't they know
they're
this?
hosting.
Come on.
They're hosting like a bunch of the state championships for high school sports, like for track and field and for a couple other sports that weekend as well, too. So, yeah, not the smartest planning wise.
It wasn't. And, but, the only good news, if you can find a silver lining to getting eliminated so quickly from the Big 12 tournament. Okay, this thing drops. We're taping on Wednesday. We drop this episode on Thursday. The game's not till Friday night. Okay. So we haven't played a baseball game. That Okie State game was what, last Thursday?
Last
Thursday. So you talk about resting every arm in your rotation, every arm in your bullpen. You've had plenty of opportunities to regroup and get your mind right. So we're going to come in well rested. If there's an upside to it, that's the upside.
Yeah, it's true.
Again, let's see how it goes, but let's head down there with the mindset of taking care of business. And I'm quite certain that the sour taste in Randy Mazey's mouth right now, and this team, I mean, they've been resilient for the better part of the season. I expect them to bounce back from what was a disappointing end to an otherwise glorious season.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Like you said, they've had time to kind of sit and stew in this. I expect them to be ready to go on Friday night against those Hoosiers from Indiana. And good luck if you're trying to find a hotel room in Lexington, because I don't think there's any within 60 or 90 minutes currently, which stinks, really, honestly, just kind of for the parents more so than anybody else. But where there's a will, there's a way, and I'm sure they will find a way. And speaking of hotel rooms being unavailable, well, folks, if you don't have your hotel room for the Backyard Brawl yet, I mean, I tell you what a transition there, baby. You might be out of luck, or you might need to take out a second mortgage, because we all know the Backyard Brawl is September 16th at home against those stinking Pitt Panthers. That, of course, week 3 of the college football season. It was announced on Wednesday, Jed, May 31st, last day of the month of May, that game will be a 7:30 kickoff in prime time on ABC. And man, with that news of it being a night game, I mean, hotel prices are ridiculous in Morgantown right now.
We did not want the inverted version of what happened to us against Virginia Tech.
Correct. We talked about this.
Lazy noon kickoff. We feared that for so long. We take their best shot prime time Thursday night under the lights at Lane Stadium. We were fearful the same might happen with Pitt. Take their best shot at Heinz Field at Acrisure last year, prime time, season opener, et cetera, et cetera. We were fearful of a lazy early kickoff. So we're terribly excited that we get the 7:30 kick. Now, Tony pointed something out. Caridi pointed something out on Twitter. It was pretty interesting. We've discussed this in passing before. If you look at just Saturday games, in other words, forget the midweek game.
I know where you're going with this.
Post 7:00 kickoffs, in other words, 7 p or later. This is the first 7 p or later kickoff under the lights on a Saturday since Neil Brown got to Morgantown in 2000.
At home in Morgantown.
At home. Oh yeah,
we played We played a bunch on the road.
Of course, right? Of course we have. But in Morgantown, under the light, this is his first true taste of Saturday night under the lights. That is in year 5.
It's crazy.
That's remarkable. So yeah,
because like the Baylor game was on Thursday night.
Right.
That's not the Kansas game last year. That was 6:00, and that was on ESPN Plus. This is the nationally televised night
ABC.
Game.
Yeah. For the eyes of the nation will be upon us. ABC. 7:30 kick, Pitt in town. I mean, the last time they were in Morgantown, speaking of night games,
2011,
another night game. incredible atmosphere. But I think, Wes, when you
21-20,
talk
baby.
about those hotel rates, again, the first one that was texted to me when people started, scouring around. First of all, a lot of people already bought their hotels because these are oftentimes 2-night minimums surrounding
Correct.
WU games. They already bought
Correct.
Friday and Saturday previous to this, but some people were scrambling, say, "Hey, I wonder what I can find. What's the rate?" Well, somebody texted me a rate of $650. That includes taxes. And somebody else, it was an attorney, commented when I put this on Twitter that they already spent $2,500 on the
Ooh.
2 nights to stay. So anybody in the greater Morgantown area or even Fairmont
Airbnb,
area,
baby.
you might be able to rent out your shed for that Saturday night after the game, because some of these folks, I think, are just going to be laboring through that long drive home to avoid those rates.
That's what I mean, long drive home. It's 90 minutes for me. It's not that bad, but
no,
that's what I'm gonna be. That's what I'm gonna
I-
be doing. And I lucked out because I'll be able to fully enjoy myself and get rowdy and get loud because the Steelers play on Monday Night Football that week, so I don't have to be at work at 8 a.m. on Sunday. So we were hoping for a night game. You're right. I kind of laid out how I know this is going to work. It's going to be just like Virginia Tech. They got us in prime time in a big game. It's going to be noon on a Saturday in week 3, and it's going to be 90 degrees outside, right? And it's going to kind of zap the atmosphere a little bit. Well, I have never been
hungover coming in halftime.
I've never been so happy to be wrong. As it will not just be a night game. It will be a nationally, not one of those we're picking the time because it's on a streaming service like we did with Kansas last year, like we're doing with Duquesne this year. A true night televised game, the Backyard Brawl, the first one in Morgantown since we beat those Pitt Panthers 21-20 back in 2011. We do know 4 of the kickoff times for this season. Those were announced today. We had the Penn State time had leaked a couple weeks ago, and we had discussed that. But just to give everybody a quick snapshot here, 4 games, the football times, the kickoff times, announced. Week 1 at Penn State, that's 7:30 on NBC. Week 2 at home against Duquesne, 6 o'clock at night on ESPN+. Week 3 at home against Pitt, 7:30 on ABC. And then the Thursday game, of course, obviously, this one's kind of it's a foregone conclusion. You're not going to play Thursday at noon, right? But it's that Thursday game in Houston against Dana Holgerson and the Cougs. That will be a 7 o'clock kickoff on FS1. So you get NBC, ESPN, ABC, FS1. Good little early slate of nighttime games announced here at the end of May.
I will think about it. 2 regional rivals, again, back on the schedule in Penn State and Virginia Tech. I'm not so sure. I always say this. If you ask Penn State if we're a rival, I don't know what the answer will be. But they're a rival to us.
Penn State's unrivaled, so they have no rivals.
That's right. They're unrivaled. But
they try and force a rivalry with Ohio State and with Michigan and with Michigan State. But they're unrivaled. That's their slogan.
They're unrivaled.
Dorks.
So both those regional games under the lights, one in Happy Valley, one in Morgantown. So you talk about extending an olive branch to West Virginia fans who struggle to travel to these road destinations in the Big 12. Wow, what an opportunity to skirt up the road to Happy Valley or to make it to Morgantown, in and out. If you can somehow navigate that hotel situation, whatever it might be. My situation is typically, Wes, what I'll do is, depending on the time of the kickoff, if it's an earlier kick, I'll stay Friday in Morgantown. If it's a later kick, I'll stay Saturday. So there's options, but
sure. Well, you get taken care of,
But
yes, that's one thing that Happy Valley and Morgantown both have in common. The hotel situation isn't exactly bountiful. It's not terrible, but it's not bountiful either.
Yeah.
And so make sure you're making your arrangements early for the Pitt kickoff if you're trying to find a place to stay in the Morgantown area, or obviously out there in Happy Valley on Labor Day weekend.
Instead of taking $2,500 and plopping it down on 2 nights in a hotel, you might just want to take $2,500 and make a down payment on an RV.
I was going to say, or just rent a camper for the week.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that's what we were talking
ROI,
about this,
right?
Me and some of my buddies were talking about this last week. I think we're just going to rent an RV for that Penn State game and
Not
just,
a bad idea.
Have 6 or 7 of us just crash all throughout the RV, and that's going to be a lot cheaper than trying to find housing there in Happy Valley at this point.
That'll be like Woodstock all over again.
Yeah, it'll be, except for we're going to take showers. All right. Just like Woodstock, except for we're showering, baby. This episode of ITG also brought to you in part by our friends at GoMart. here to keep you going. Make sure you're signing up for your Go Mart rewards as you travel throughout the Mountain State and onward. Jed, Pat McAfee, of course, speaking of broadcast announcements, this is kind of, same church, different pew, if you will.
Yeah.
Pat McAfee is on his way to ESPN, and we knew the number had to be big because he just left a big deal with FanDuel to do things on his own, their YouTube show and all that they have been doing for a few years. We knew the number had to be big for him to not only kind of leave that, but to go somewhere where he's going to have bosses and he's going to be part of a corporation and all. He's not going to have just the complete freedom and autonomy that he has had to this point. And those details have emerged, and man, it's a big number for Pat McAfee and company.
17 million a year. Now his duties are going to include at least, obviously, the Pat McAfee show, and he'll continue his role as an analyst on game day. Now, I think, Wes, what it speaks to, let's start with this. We're seeing this play out at a time when ESPN is undergoing yet another purge. They're cutting a lot of their talent. They're parting ways with some longtime talent. And yet, as they do that, they're claiming
spending a lot of money on McAfee. Yeah.
They're visionary enough to say, hey, Pat McAfee is the future. That's really what they're saying. Mm-hmm. When you attach a number like that to it, that's all about the value that you see in a guy like that. And the funny thing is that he's talked about this many times. These are the networks that, there was a time they wouldn't return his call. They laughed him out of the room, right? But he is, as maybe only he can, been true to himself. Really hasn't changed that much at all through the course of what he's done. And he even did the promo when this news first broke with this relationship with ESPN that, hey, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to change that. I'm going to get rid of this. And he said, just kidding. So he included the.
He said he said the only thing that will change is he's not going to say the F word. He said that's the only thing that's going to as much. That's right.
That's what he even qualified that. But so. Yeah, there's a lot of it's included in his contract in terms of the latitude that he'll be granted. Well, let's face it, you can't include everything in a contract. Things will arise that, he'll brush against ESPN in ways he's not happy with, I'm sure. But sure, $17 million can make you force a smile when you otherwise probably wouldn't be willing to. But I think it just speaks to the brand that he's established, and they see that, sports journalism is going in a direction. It's really pivoted in a stark way in recent years. I mean, if you look at not just the online presence of some of these personalities, but it's not nearly as structured. It's not nearly as formal. It's much more raw. Which
it's not the Dan Patrick show. It's not Colin Cowherd.
It's not segments or things of that nature. It's a lot more nimble. And I think what we're describing, we describe that as Pat McAfee and the brand that he's established for the brand, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what ESPN has apparently recognized, and more power to him. So Owen Schmitt's former teammate at $17 million a year, and now we just got to get Owen and the ITG exactly numbers up to match that, right? So
that's exactly right. And hey, listen, I know a lot of people don't like ESPN, they don't like Disney, they think they're gonna take McAfee and turn it into a PG program, and it's gonna change the core and everything of what they are. I don't think that those guys would have agreed to this if that was the case. Sure, they'll have to make some concessions. You always do when you make a deal like this, but I don't see those guys drastically changing. They've done so well and they've been so successful doing the Frank Sinatra my way that I don't think I don't anticipate some drastic change, or that term sellout, right, that's been thrown around by a lot of more critical people. And I'll tell you this as well too. While McAfee's brand is big, I mean, he's got a huge YouTube show. He's been on WWE, was a regular there for a while, has been a part of a WrestleMania. I'm sure he'll be doing more stuff with them in the future. He's on College Game Day. Make no mistake about it. Having Pat McAfee and his WVU jersey hanging up and the football helmet and some of the country road stuff and things like that they do, and talking about Bob Huggins and talking about these different things that they do regularly. Garrett Green this week.
Did a whole segment on Garrett.
The arm, the reach of ESPN is taking that to another level. So if you're ticked off because you think the show's going to change, or even you just don't like ESPN or Disney or whatever the reason may be, at least rest assured that McAfee's mountaineer conversations and imagery in their studios and all those things, they're going to a bigger audience. Whether you want to agree with that or not, that's just the facts. So there's a little bright side, is that it puts that mountaineer label, I think, in front of more eyeballs and in front of a massive brand that is, of course, ESPN.
When you just consider the journey that Pat McAfee's been on, like I think back after his missed field goal at Colorado. Okay, I'm trying to remember who we played the following week. It was at home,
Cincinnati, where he hit the 52-yarder to send it to overtime
later in the year.
Yeah, Cincinnati was later in the year.
Cincinnati was 03. That was Rich's first road win. That was 03.
No, McAfee wouldn't have been 03.
No, McAfee won on a team, but the 52,
no, McAfee's senior year, he made a 52-yarder at home against Cincinnati at the buzzer to force overtime.
Oh, yeah. And then we lost in overtime. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Did we lose in overtime?
That was later. We lost in overtime. That was later in the year.
It was because it was cold. It was cold.
Yeah, I want to say like late October.
That was my senior year. That was my senior year of high school. Yeah.
But I don't remember who was after. I could look it up real quick, but it didn't really matter. But I remember seeing him on the sidelines and kind of just trying to give him some words of consolation for whatever it's worth from idiot me. That, hey, keep your head up. And of course, Pat's going to keep his head up. He's going to find a way. He's had times of despair, but much darker times than that, as he's talked about after the Pitt game. But from that to, I'll never forget when he was on site with the ESPN crew in Waco, and we were at McLean Stadium, and I just kind of bumped into him, and he had the 10-gallon hat and the cowboy boots, and he's almost in a costume up on the press level. And I'm like, so much has changed since. This meek looking, he looked like he was 13 years old. He looked like Wes when he was back at WU in 08 still kicking. And to think that he's become this larger than life figure with, costumed up with the ESPN crew, and just what a journey he has been on. But it's only been realized again by, in large measure, being true to who he is and never giving an inch. Now, it will be critical and important to see if he continues to not give that inch, because that's what everybody wants to see, irrespective of what is or isn't included in the language of the contract. There's going to be times ESPN isn't what he's used to. Those guardrails are not what he's used to. Now
he's not used to any guardrails.
No, he's not used to any guardrails. So he's a smart guy. But it's going to be interesting over the arc of time to see how this works out. But more power to him for establishing this level of equity with the brand that he's forged.
Absolutely. And I'm sure those guys will. It'll be a lot of fun to watch them kind of navigate this next phase. So congrats to Pat and everyone who's a part of that and everything that they've built and accomplished. And hopefully it's onward and upward from here. Another thank you to Toothman Ford for being a presenting sponsor of this episode of ITG. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. Get your butt on down to Grafton and check out their great inventory on their website before you do so. Cars cost less in Grafton. Make sure you're supporting Toothman Ford, who's doing great work with WVU NIL. Jed, couple more topics here to kick around as we start to close this thing down. This feels like a topic that we've discussed for months now, but man, for the third or fourth time, does it feel like Colorado is close to joining the Big 12? I mean, again, we've been having this conversation for a while now, but it really does feel like it's starting to inch closer and closer.
Come back home, right? But Dennis Dodd,
the prodigal son.
Dennis Dodd with a story this week talking about Colorado having substantive talks with the Big 12. Now, you can determine what that might mean, but it has been said that the move apparently won't be made without Deion Sanders' consent. And what's interesting is Dennis Dodd went on to comment in a later tweet that there's talk that Deion might view this as a pathway back into Texas from a recruiting standpoint.
Yes.
That would make sense. So if you want to establish, a foothold in Texas, what better way to do it than, rejoin a conference with a number of Texas schools in it, right?
Sure.
That makes sense. Now, Barry Tram, our old friend Barry Tram with the Oklahoman, one of the more venerable members of the media in Big 12 circles, he said last week, Colorado is ready to join the Big 12 soon. Now, again, some of this is left open to interpretation, but Rick George, the athletic director at Colorado, he's obviously playing it close to the vest. He's saying all the right things. Hey, we'd love to remain a member of the Pac-12. But what's interesting about this is apparently none of this is been established, at least revealed publicly, but it's been speculated that the way this works with the Big 12 contract with ESPN and with Fox, it's expected that if Colorado, for instance, were to join the Big 12, they would actually receive an equal cut of the media money, which would be the full 31.7 million. And that would be starting in 2025. Because if you remember the stipulation with the networks, with ESPN and with Fox that the Big 12 reached with your mark was, okay, if you get expansion and that expansion team is a current member of a P5, they get the full cut of 31.7. That's interesting. So that might influence the thinking on both sides. But and the other question is, could this, if in fact it plays out, be the domino that brings the rest of the four corner schools to fall into place? And of course, I'm talking about, Utah, Arizona State. You would have to think that if one of those four gives way and gives an inch, because what you find is if that were to happen, you got all four of those schools added to the Big 12 mix, you're looking at the only conference, this is what Brett Yormark would have to say, the only conference that would represent all four time zones. And from a TV inventory standpoint, that's really intriguing, right?
Sure.
But meanwhile, as all this is being said, the Pac-12 is still kind of in a holding pattern in pursuit of its own media rights deal. Now, absent USC and absent UCLA, can they pull off the same relative miracle that Brett Yormark pulled off? I think it's near impossible. First of all, it's a different animal in the Big 12, in the Pac-12. Let's revisit what Brett Yormark did. He found a way to get more money per school in a post-Texas, post-Oklahoma world in the Big 12. I just don't see that happening in the Pac-12 with UCLA and USC off to the Big 10. So, and the more you hear, the more you think. Washington and Oregon are kind of waiting on that call from the Big 10. Is it going to happen?
I think that's the biggest reason why, too, because when Texas and Oklahoma got poached, it was like, okay, but they're not coming back.
Solidarity.
There was solidarity. They're not coming back.
Whereas
now with the Pac-12, it feels like they're scrambling to find those life vests on the Titanic as this thing goes down.
Yes, and on one level, they're saying, hey, they're talking to Rice, they're talking to San Diego State. Well, I'm not going to be as quick to poke fun at San Diego State. If you look at what they kind of got cooking lately, played for a men's basketball national championship, one of the better baseball teams in all the land. If you look at their combined, I heard their AD interviewed last week. If you look at their combined men's basketball and football record over the last, I can't remember how many years, they're right there with Ohio State 1 and 2 in all the country. So they rebuilt Jack Murphy, basically. They're hosting these gigantic concerts. There's a buzz to that brand at San Diego State, but that notwithstanding, you kind of got to wonder about the stability of the footing in the Big 12 or in the Pac-12. So does that precipitate some kind of departure, whether it's Colorado or someone else first? But meanwhile, they're going to be having meetings next week in West Virginia, the Big 12 meetings, and
the Greenbrier, baby.
What's that?
The Greenbrier, baby.
Yeah. So there's also discussions about the possibilities of UConn. There's also discussions about the possibilities of Gonzaga. So you really don't know where this is going to go. But what's interesting, Colorado is a Big 12 legacy program. If you really think about it, they were involved in some version of this league from 1948 through 2010 before their departure to the Pac-12. Now that's historically, and they had a share of a national championship as a member of that conference. But more recently, not so much. 1-11 last year, famously perhaps the worst team in all of Power 5. That led to Dion. So they've had one winning season, West, since 2005. This brand has really fallen on hard times. Now, the Dion factor has made them the darling of the offseason. People really don't know what to expect. People don't know what to anticipate. I saw something that had them 25,000 to 1 to win the national championship, and that was the most bet futures bet in that whatever particular house it was. It's like,
which is just
it's insane when you look at the
they're more likely to win one game than they are to win.
I think if they win 4 to 5 games, he should be coach of the year in the Pac-12.
Yeah, they won one game.
That's how bad they are. If they win 4 games, holy cow, how do you do that? So. Yeah. But the Dion factor, I think what that makes them right now, this is the definition of the sizzle, not the steak.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
That's what this is. And how far that goes, maybe they can parlay that in to a little more established situation in a conference like it would seem to be right now in the Big 12. The devil, well, in the Big 12, you got a media deal for X amount of years going to pay you nearly $32 million. And that's before you get into your tier 3 or on down the line.
Right.
So that's kind of what's interesting about it. But it's a very intriguing story to monitor, if for no other reason than the other dominoes that could fall. But I'm sure as these meetings proceed, we'll have more to talk about next week.
That's exactly where I was going with this. I don't think we'll have to wait much longer for more smoke around this fire, as we've got Big 12 meetings coming up. Yeah. And if there is going to be anything, we know, I mean, these schools want to get this done before they get into the next academic year, before they get into the next football season. They don't want something like this lingering into the season and causing distractions and all that different stuff. So yeah, watch this space. And obviously, we'll continue to keep you updated and continue to discuss any news or developments. All right, Jed, couple quick hitters to get us out of here as we wrap this thing up. You mentioned hold tight to our degenerates. All right, you sent Owen and I a hilarious text this week about betting on the National Spelling Bee. Yes. What do you got?
Well, David Mason from Bet Online AG is the one who posted the tweet. And believe it or not, they get a lot of action on the National Spelling Bee, which is, of course, the Scripps Spelling Bee. It's the most well-known. It's been going on since 1925. But what's very interesting is when you look at some of the things that they actually take bets on. Let's get the list out here, Wes. I'm trying to look for the tweet.
Letters in the winning word, over under 10.5.
Over under. We're going to get to that because we're going to close with that on this part of the segment. But if you notice, they broke the alphabet down. The winning word starts with what letter? Now, read what it says there with the letters.
Yeah. So A to H plus 175, I to Q plus 175, R to Z plus 180. So now, that tells me pretty much the same odds there.
I put too much thought into this, but that tells me they must think there's a chance that the first two, A to X or A to whatever it was, one of them might change. That's why they segmented it in two different ways. But
right.
But you talked about it. The over under on the winning word is 10.5 letters. So what's going to be the winning word? So I put too much thought into this.
I don't know what the winning word is going to be, but I'm going over.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to go under, and I'm going to tell you why. I wish Owen was here. Oh, I wish he was on here to have this conversation. So if you look at some winning words in recent years, moorhen. 7 words, 7 letters, very short word. Mariah, some tropical tree, 7 letters. It's spelled Murray, not like Mariah Carey. It's just pronounced like Mariah Carey. So in the recent years, you had winning words like that, very short. So are they due for an over? Mm-hmm. Now, if you look historically, because there's actually a website that lists every winning word.
I'm sure there is.
If you look historically, I believe the longest winning word in history is 15 letters. And it is SCHERENSCH. That's why I wish Owen was here. There's a lot of SCH action going on here. NITTE. Schierenschnied. Okay.
Which is it's a good German word.
Art of cutting paper into designs. That's 15 letters.
No, that's called origami. All right. Quit, Josh. Quit. Quit.
Come on. You're right. That's another one. How many letters is origami? 7 again? So again, I see a trend emerging, and I'm sticking with the short trend of you've had these viva sepulchre, eczema. I mean, they trip these kids up, like some of these words. And some of them, if you go back and look long enough, some of them aren't actually that hard. If you go back into the 30s, they'll poke one in there that's like not that difficult. And you're like, you won with that word. Now, again, I was in the way back. It still haunts me, obviously, I wouldn't talk about it. Way back in the 6th grade, I was a finalist out of the final 2 in the county spelling bee.
Of course you were.
Now think about what that means in the Tucker County spelling bee, right? So it was down to me and Donna Barnes. And Donna and I are going
still
back.
Remember her name, I tell you.
I still remember. Oh, yeah. Donna grew up right down the street from me. So I still remember we were back and forth for several words. And we're knocking out Yucatan Peninsula, Appalachian Mountains, didn't even blink, right? Guess what word tripped me up? And Donna beat me and won the county championship. Bronchitis. Which I always tell my wife, I bet you one day I die of bronchitis. I'm going to be
like the last. And then and Donna will be there at your bedside saying, I couldn't let you forget.
It still haunts me. So I can't even imagine the preparation that these kids, this is about as meaningful a setting as you could ever get from a spelling standpoint, and the preparation and the work and the coaching and the investment they make, and to get up there and have some of these words, when you look through it, it's like just patently unfair. And the list that they study from, you basically don't even have a list. Here's your dictionary. That's basically what it amounts to. It's so comprehensive and crazy and long. But yeah, to think that we're such degenerates, that we're taking serious action on all these different possibilities. Did you see the last one? Like if the winner has braces or not?
I was gonna say that's my favorite. Like it's like the best Super Bowl props, like what color Gatorade will be dumped on the coach, all these different things. The best prop bet that you can make for the spelling bee is, will the winner wear braces? Yes, plus 155, no, minus 220.
That's just beautiful. I mean, that's just beautiful.
That is degenerate. That's degenerate. I tell you what, just
you're betting on week 2 of the NFL preseason. You're betting over unders in the Pro Bowl.
You're betting on like Russian ping pong.
Oh man. Yeah, you're betting Forrest Gump in Moscow.
Not that at the start of the pandemic I was betting on Russian ping pong because it was the only thing to bet on. I'm not speaking from personal experience here, but I might have been at 6 a.m. while I was producing radio shows from my basement betting on Russian ping pong with some of our hosts because we had nothing better to do.
If you ever talked to somebody that bet on the Pro Bowl, you've talked to these people. You're
absolutely.
Like, what is wrong with you? What
preseason games, Pro Bowl? It's just, listen, hey, God bless them. More power to them. But I would rather bet on if the winner of the spelling bee is going to have braces or not than bet on the friggin' Pro Bowl.
Beautiful.
Jed, last thing here quickly. Will Ferrell potentially there's. I mean, it's we see movies and they're 2 hours long and it's wow, that was great. It takes years, the process of making these movies, casting these movies, writing the script, filming everything, putting it all together, all that. Well, there's discussions going on right now about making a Madden movie, as in John Madden, and a little bit of his life story and how the video game got created and all that stuff. And it sounds like Will Ferrell is in line to play John Madden. You interested? Yay or nay?
I'm incredibly interested. Now, I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm a big Will Ferrell guy. But when you look at, I found myself teasing my brain. Okay, Ron Burgundy, Ricky Bobby, Chaz Michaels, Buddy the Elf might be my favorite, to be honest with you. I mean, Elf might be my favorite Will Ferrell movie. If not, the other guys might. Kind of a hidden gem in my estimation.
A great one.
When you look at what a great movie. He's Alan Gamble, and that was just beautiful. But even when you think of Brennan and Step Brothers, I'm like, maybe when you think John Madden, who do you think alongside John Madden? Pat Summerall. So maybe if you go all in and you bring John C. Reilly in as Summerall, bring John C. Reilly in as Summerall and jump all in, right?
That's not bad. You naming all these Will Ferrell roles, though. You didn't even bring up Kicking and Screaming and Mike Ditka. I mean,
okay, well there you go. That's a great point. But I've never seen him play someone necessarily that I think would be like John Madden. I mean, he's played outlandish, larger than life, very effects oriented type people, but nobody he's played makes me think of John Madden, doesn't conjure thoughts of John Madden. But at the same time, I don't know if you saw Kevin James as Sean Payton.
I have not watched that yet.
I did watch that and I was like, okay, halfway through I kind of forgot it was Kevin James. That's his job, right?
Sure.
And I was like, all right, I'm invested enough in the story. It was kind of what happened when he had to sit out when he was suspended from the league, and he was helping coach his kids' high school team. But when I first heard Kevin James is playing Sean Payton, what? But I got into it enough that it wasn't the best thing I ever saw. But it does make me wonder. Look, Will Ferrell's some people would say, he just reinvents the same character 10 different ways. But he's entertaining enough that would be my caveat. I'm going to give it a chance anyway. But if I hear that they're partnering up with John C. Reilly as Pat Summerall,
then you're all in.
All in. Yes, I'm all in.
Well, then it would really start to feel like Step Brothers and some of those.
And what's wrong with that, right?
I can see it. Like if we all have the Ricky Bobby and the Ron Burgundy, Will Ferrell kind of burned into our memories. But if you've seen Will Ferrell lately, at an LA Kings game where they show him every single time the Kings are in the playoffs. He's at soccer games a lot. He's out in the public a lot. If you've seen him lately, it happens to all of us. I'm not trying to be rude here, but he's looking a little bit older. his hairline's getting a little more receded. You know, like I if he puts on 20 pounds more, I can totally see it.
Pull it off.
He
both
can
West
pull it
Coast
off.
guys. I mean, they have
Both
that
West Coast guys. And I think, like you said, I would probably be interested in a John Madden movie, period. But you attach a big name like Will Ferrell to it, I think I'm in. Listen, I'm not going to go see it in theaters or anything like that, but I'll watch it when it comes out on streaming services. Certainly.
This. When I talk about John C. Reilly, of course, a lot of things come to mind. Dewey Cox, what's that mean to you?
Walk Hard.
Did you see it?
Of course.
Underrated. Not only that, but strangely underrated, very weird soundtrack.
Hey man, I'm the king, man. All right, and I know
that
karate.
Soundtrack's pretty good.
There's only two people that know karate: it's the king and the Chinese.
Walk Hard, Down Lives of Rocky Road. Okay, we have officially jumped the shark on this episode. So, but Dewey Cox, strangely weird, underrated soundtrack, and all original songs, all weird songs. Yeah, but
like the Johnny Cash, Elvis kind of knockoff.
Do it, make it happen.
Let's do it. That's right. Well, hey, you gotta write a letter and make that happen. I love it. Final thank you to Fortis for presenting this episode of ITG for roof performance and financial security guaranteed. Visit fortis.us.com, folks. That'll do it for us this week. We will be back next week, maybe with some Big 12 expansion news, conversation from the league meetings, and more as we get closer and closer to tangible football here. We're going to have some fun guests lined up for you. We got some fun kind of goofy off-season, quirky, funny topics that we'll be getting into as well, too. So plenty to get into next week. Thanks to Jed. And we'll get Owen back in here as well too, and all the best to everybody out there. Hopefully you all enjoyed the long weekend. A thank you. I know we're a few days late here, obviously, but a thank you to all those who are serving and have served this country, as we're just just past Memorial Day here. So thanks to everybody who is sacrificed, and especially to those who have given all. We do appreciate it. Wanted to make sure to say that here for just a minute. Calendar's rolling into June. It's summertime. Everybody enjoy yourself. Be safe out there if you're traveling around to concerts or sporting events or vacations, whatever it may be. And we'll be back to talk to you here as always next week. Make sure you're checking out our ITG shorts that Jed continues to pump out on YouTube. And of course, the one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. For the Runaway Beer Truck, Owen Schmitt, and the Signal Caller, Jed Drenning, I'm Wesley Uhler. You've been in the gun.